Alright guys, we're Team 5, Chrysler team, and we're going to talk about the CAN system, which is the Controller Area Network. I'm Andrew Howerson.
My name's Drew.
I'm me.
I'm Sarah.
Richard.
So CAN is acronym for Controller Area Network. It was first developed by Robert Bosch. It is a wiring system that links control systems, usually in automobiles, and so that they can communicate with each other and exchange information. It has been used in the automotive industry for over 20 years now. And the first producers of CAN chips were Intel and Philips. It is a multi-drop, multi-master serial bus that provides communication between controllers, sensors, and actuators. It is very reliable, especially for systems that have real-time requirements. It is also available on a lot of microprocessors, inexpensive microprocessors. There are two versions of that are in use now, CAN 2.0A and CAN 2.0B. The difference between the two is that CAN 2.0B has an extended identifier, which uses 29 bits, as compared to CAN 2.0A, which uses 11 bits. So CAN 2.0B allows for more types of messages to be identified. There are also two international standards, ISO 118982, which is for high-speed applications at 1 megabyte per second, and ISO 118983 for low-speed applications at 125 kilobytes per second. Okay, let's go over some characteristics of the CAN bus. All messages that are transmitted on the bus are broadcast messages. All nodes are allowed to transmit messages at any time. All messages contain an identifier that identifies the source and the content. And all the receivers on the bus listen for the signal, listen for the message, and when it receives the message based on what the source or the content is, it either decides to process it or ignore it. Yeah. So physically, it's just a pair of twisted wires connected to 120 ohm at both ends, and all the nodes that need to communicate with each other are connected on this bus. So this is a display of what CAN high and CAN low signals would look like on an oscilloscope. So there are basically two states for the CAN bus: the recessive state and the dominant state. Dominant state is low signal, and recessive is high signal. And okay, so yeah, when it is in the dominant state, when the bus is in the dominant state, the CAN high is pulled up to 3.5 volts, and the CAN low is pulled down to 1.5 volts. So both the CAN high and the CAN low are driven in the dominant state. In the recessive state, CAN high and CAN low are not driven, and the bus floats at a midpoint value of 2.5 volts. So when two nodes are trying to access the bus at the same time, if one node is trying to access it in the recessive state and the other is trying to access it in the dominant state, then the dominant one wins, and the state visible to all the other nodes on the bus would be the dominant state, and the node that was trying to access it in the recessive state will have to wait until the bus is free.
Okay, so within the OSI models, there's 7 different layers or levels in the CAN system. The two most important are the data link and the physical, which is also most important for our project. So first I'll talk about the physical layer. The physical layer, there really are no specifications in the OSI. The driver and receiver are open to the system. You can pick whatever you want. And then the transport medium, how you send the message and stuff, the wires and the connectors are kind of whatever. There's no industry standard, and it's based on the application. For our project, It's a PCB board that we're gonna do. This is actually a wiring diagram of how we have to get all the CAN messages between all the different modules, where all 10 modules are at the top. We have our multiplexing and our transistors for power, and then all the way into the microprocessor where the CAN bus all, comes together in the bottom. So we went with PCB. In vehicles and stuff, a lot of it's actually hard wiring and wiring harnesses. Again, it's open to the individual task or whatever you need to do with the CAN system. The data link layer, that is actually very defined by the CAN specification in terms of filtering, error detection, signaling, and coding. This is essentially what Sana talked about, the signaling. For our specific project, we don't go a whole lot into this, other than we cannot corrupt it. So we have a little bit of filtering, and we have to make sure there's no noise induced on this layer, otherwise it'll mess up the CAN signals and the modules won't be able to communicate. That's about all we do for our project.
For data transmission, the CAN bus is a serial bus, so it sends data. So the capacity of the bus, it depends on the frequency it sends data. For example, our sponsor Quasar use two different standards, which is 500 kbps per second and 250 kbps per second. Regarding the frequency there, we for this project, we need to think about our box will do correctly if it runs at 500 kHz. That's one of the reasons we picked the marks we currently using, and the data only transmit on tone lines, which is CAN high and CAN low, but they both only transmit one data at the same time. For example, when CAN high is high and CAN low is low, you compare the two and get only one data from the data line. And the data transmission is synchronous. We have a couple of synchronous transmission protocol, such as SPI, I2C. The difference between CAN and those protocols is CAN system don't have a line for clock. It sends data with a synchronization section, which you can divide certain bits from the synchronization section and get the frequency of the data frame. So that's how it works with synchronous. And the CAN bus also has a priority system, which Sam already said in the previous slides. But here is in digital view. The bits are different by dominant bit and recessive bit. It's actually for the CAN bus, the dominant bit would be the 01, and here are some examples. And for example, we have two modules. There is SYN IDs in the data frame. So we have two modules there, which module 1's ID is 31, module 2's ID is 32. You can see from there, the module 1 has higher priority. So when it transmit the first two data, it both transmit. But when it's on the third data, the dominant bit is a low bit, so the module 2 will stop transmitting data, and it automatically only transmit data from module 1. So that's the priority system is used to avoid the destruction between different modules sending data at the same time.
Okay, for the frame, there's 4 types of frame in the CAN bus. One is the data frame, second is remote frame, next error frame, and the last is overload frame. And for the data frame, what is the data frame? It's basically has containing all the node data for transferring the data. And there's two message formats for in data frame. One is the base frame format, which is, as the Sana said, there's 11-bit identifier, and it is only described by the Canvas 2.0A and Canvas 2.0B. And the second one is extended frame format. It is 29 bits, including the 11 basic bits, just the same as the first one, and the other 18 bits for extended. And number two only described by the CAN 2.0B. And there's an image for the basic structure of the message formats. The first bit is called the start of the frame. It's very necessary for both of them, and it should be go 0. And next there's 11 bits, just like this is the same as the first one. It's the basic bits. All the identifier is in the green field, and followed by green field is the blue. It's called the RTR, which means the remote transmission request. And in data, it is can tell whether this frame is data frame or the remote frame, which I will mention later. And for the data frame, it will go 0, and for the remote frame, it will go to the 1, which is a recess rate. And the next is the identifier extension bit. It determines whether the bit is 11 or the 29. 0 is 11 and the 1 is 29. And it's followed by the 1 bit for the reserve bit. And in this case, it should be go 0, but in other case, maybe it will go to 1. Next, all of this part is for the data transmission, as the Mon said. So this part, the yellow part, is used for control the data, and this one is all the information of data, and the CRC is for checking. And at last, all of them need to have an NF frame, which is have 7 bits in it, and it all need to be set to 1. So here, there's a CAN high and CAN low, as Mon said. There's a signal here. The signal level, as mentioned in the introduction, comes here. When the bit is 1, which is recess rate, the CAN high will go down and the CAN low will go up. Opposite, when the bit is 0, and CAN high will go up, and CAN low will go down. And for the remote frame, so remote frame basically has a request for transmitting the specific identifier, and there's two differences between the data frame and remote frame. One is I mentioned before, the RTR difference is remote frame is 1 and data frame is 0. And there's the second one is there's no data field. This part, the red part, there's no data field for the remote frame. And the remote frame and data frame, they cannot happen together. Always the data frame need to transfer the data first, and then the remote frame, because this one will make sure the node in transmitting the remote frame can get the desired data immediately and accurately. And next is the error frame. There's error frame obviously is used for checking the errors. There's two different fields. One is error flag and one is error delimiter. Error flag has two types. One is active and one is passive. All of them has 6 bit. the difference between active and passive is the active has the 6-bit for the dominant, which is 0, and the passive has the 6-bit for the recessive, which is 1. And the error delimiter is 8 recessive bit, which is 1. And the last one is the overload frame. Overload frame is used for it has when transmitting the data from one to the other, we need to get a delay in the remote frame and the data frame to make sure they works well and no collision between them. And there's 2 big fields. One is overload flag and one is the overload delimiter. Overload delimiter is the same as the error frame. It's 8 recessive bit. And there's 2 conditions to make the overflag happen. The first one is when finish one transmitting the data and before starting the next one, there's need to a delay for the data and the remote frame. And the second one is when the intermission, while the intermission, we need to detecting the dominant bit, which is 0. So all of these 4 frames will working together and making sure the process of the data transfer goes well and goes right.
Okay, so for a modern application, how is a typical CAN system that we just explained, how is that used today? Well, a CAN system, there can be up to 70 ECUs in any given vehicle. So this system obviously needs to be able to communicate with all those. A nominal CAN system it supposedly can handle over 2,000 nodes or something like that, so 2,000 different modules. But in reality, it can actually support over 100. It's like 110 or something, right around in that range. So that's why a lot of the choice was made to go from just strict wiring, hard wiring every connection, every module, to more of a bus system where everything can just communicate on a high and low channel. This also allows for communication without a host computer. So you can have all these modules talking to each other without needing a central processing system that's going to go through and say, okay, it's going to take in this data and read it and everything. The CAN bus does all that for you, which again, it reduces the amount of items, amount of devices in the system, it reduces the weight of the vehicle. Everything to help for better fuel economy, cheaper overall price, everything to make it more beneficial. So the main, obviously, concern is being able to communicate between the engine control module and the other ECUs. So if you're experiencing a problem, if the engine's experiencing a problem and it realizes that it's burning rich or it's burning lean, it can communicate with like your O2 sensors and your other body modules that will allow for those changes. And again, all this happens, while you're driving down the road, and you'll never know about it. You never see any kind of performance drop because of something like this happening. It just all happens behind the scenes. And like I mentioned before, it reduces the amount of wiring. In the first application, they reduced the amount of wiring to over a mile. And I believe it was in '86. It was in a BMW. It reduced the weight of the system by over 100 pounds. I actually have an image of that. So this is kind of what I'm getting at here. You've got everything that's strictly hardwired for every possible communication line that there can be. Whereas you can take that and simplify it down using a CAN bus system. Again, allowing for communication between your ECMs and your body modules. This is also used in a little more than just auto. Again, the next slide, there's a couple. They use it in machinery, medical, ag, and even the elevator control systems are all moving to a CAN bus, which makes sense, right? You definitely don't want something like that given out on you while you're in the elevator, right? Get stuck between floors or anything like that. So I think that's the gist of how far it's moving along through the industry. I know that there's a couple other experimental applications where they're trying to make it work, but for now it's still a better solution to just stick with a hardware system. So. Any questions?
You guys using CAN System A or CAN System B for your project?
We're actually using 3. So Chrysler uses a CAN B and a CAN C. They also use a CAN I, so we have to be able to use all 3. And by use, we are literally, that's why Drew mentioned we're only really concerned about the physical layer. We're just routing the different CAN buses. So, we're allowed, have to take 10 modules and they have to be able to connect to any CAN bus at any time. So instead of having to physically connect it to the different buses, which is the way they do it now, we have to just be able to route it. Luckily, we don't have to interpret any of the kind of data that's being transmitted on the bus or anything like that, but we have to be able to make sure that, like Meg mentioned, our muxes need to be able to transfer that data rate without any loss. So.
Questions? In your applications that you had in the last slide,
Mhm.
do you know anything about whether it's being used even by aircrafts? Because
I believe that has something to do with the newer equipment that's being released by International and everything like that. And that, if I remember correctly, it's going to replicate the system that you would see in a vehicle, but you're going to be using it in a different scene where you're using it on tractors and in your back, all your farming equipment. So they again reduces cost and all those other good benefits of it. So.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.